It took me 10 years to quit drinking. I say 10 years because it was about 10 years ago when I really started to evaluate my relationship with alcohol. I wasn't in a good spot in my life. I was going to college in Florida when my life suddenly fell apart. And to be honest, it wasn't so solid to begin with. I was a bit reckless in my early 20s. I met a girl when I was in my partying phase.
What's up, goat roper?
Not much, pig liquor.
Watch the gun, baby. That's how I get the gals.
We ended up having a child together. This snapped me into reality.
Morning, Malachi.
I got a couple of jobs and I applied to college. At the beginning of my third semester, my life took a turn. The girl I talked about earlier, my son's mom, she wasn't ready to give up the lifestyle that we were previously living. This caused a lot of friction in our life. One of these nights, where friction was at an all-time high, the police got involved, and I found myself alone with my child. My in-laws, they lived a couple miles away from me, but they were of no help. They blamed me for everything. I called a lawyer, I filed the proper paperwork, and I booked a flight back home to Indiana. After nearly a year of flying back and forth between Indiana and Florida, I eventually was awarded custody of my son.
I am so sorry, but I'm going to have to interrupt this wonderful stroll down memory lane. You know, just the best time in my youth. 25 years old, in college, baby mama in jail, moving from Florida, and everything that I'd been building to Indiana to start over again, but near my family, with my son that I was fighting for custody over. One custody, so that's cool. But really sorry to interrupt that beautiful stroll down memory lane. To be honest, when I was writing the intro for this video about relapsing, I got to the point where I was talking about my life, everything I just said, and then I wrote like thousands of words on it. Clearly, there's a lot of trauma there to unpack, which I will in time. I have been on my own. I'll share more about it if you're interested. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear about that time in my life. But for now, this is a video about relapsing, and if you know me personally or you've been following along my journey, don't worry. I have not relapsed this time. It did legitimately take me 10 years of trying to get sober or trying to figure out my relationship with drinking to stay sober for more than 30 days. And we're going to talk about that in this video. I also want to say that this video is largely inspired by something I heard online where someone asked the question, if I'm drinking or if I'm not drinking and I'm on a streak of sobriety and then I drink, do I have to restart the streak? The person that answered the question gave an answer that I think is completely stupid. And we'll talk about that at the end of this video. But for now, let's just talk about relapsing, what it is and what triggers it psychologically. Simply defined, relapse is a return to substance use after a period of non-use, whether it's a night, a week, a month, even years. Unfortunately, relapse is just a part of the process for most people. And relapse actually happens so often that specialists have taken the time to identify and label 3 different kinds of relapses.
To start, you have a slip. A slip is a single instance of drinking after you have been abstinent. It's a one-time situation. Then you have a lapse. A lapse is several instances of drinking after you have achieved abstinence. It means that you have drunk more than one alcoholic beverage, but you have not returned to your previous alcoholic abuse patterns. Last but not least, you have a full-blown relapse. A relapse occurs when you not only start drinking again, but you also return to a pattern of alcohol abuse.
I feel like it's important to point out to you that I am not a doctor, not a therapist. I am just a dude with a camera and a light and a microphone, and I'm just sitting here talking to you because I used to drink on a regular basis and now I don't. So if something I'm saying doesn't work for you, you don't think it makes sense, please, I am not the end-all be-all. I'm not the sober guru. I'm just sharing my experiences to try to make you feel less alone, to help me feel less alone, and to hold myself accountable. So for the love of whoever you pray to or believe in or don't believe in, go and get some help if you feel like you need it. Reach out to a real life person. Talk to a doctor. Talk to a therapist. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let me just say, oh my gosh, quitting and getting sober is hard. It's hard for a lot of reasons. One, there's just the addictive aspect of it, right? Like psychologically, the addiction and the pull, it's there. But cocaine, for example, if you're trying to quit doing coke, you might have to change your friends. You definitely have to change your friends because cocaine friends don't like quitters. But when you quit doing cocaine, you're not driving around the interstate or hopping on a bus or opening a magazine and seeing an article that's like,
worked hard all day, take a little toot or two. And then people are like, what do you mean you don't want to do cocaine? You can't just handle a sniff? What's wrong with you? That doesn't exist for most drugs, but it exists with alcohol because alcohol is a legal drug. So to detach yourself from a thing that is embedded into culture, it's so hard. And it's so accepted that everywhere you go, sporting events, there's alcohol signs, there's advertisements. People walk around with those giant cups. When you're watching TV, there's commercials. Most of your friends, if you're a drinker, I imagine most of your friends are drinkers. And then when you start getting sober, it's so hard because it is everywhere. Just hearing this and saying it out loud, it kind of, it doesn't give me a pass for all the stupid stuff I did, but it allows me to understand that, yeah, I did struggle. I may struggle in the future. I'm hoping that you're hearing this and you're like, oh my God, he's right. It is so hard. You can't think that it's easy, okay? Get into it. Like, accept that it's going to be hard. And maybe when you're in like the moment and you're like choosing to not go out with your friends, you can be like, okay, this is easy. I got it. But you got to get through it. So with all of that said, I also want to share with you, like, psychologically, I pulled an article from Psychology Today, and I'm going to talk to you about what is happening like in your head. I know personally that if I can understand like scientifically or psychologically the process that's going on in my mind, it allows me to like detach from myself and to kind of like observe myself like the way like you would if you're watching a film. And I can be like, oh my God, this is the path you're on. These are the steps in the psychological process. Okay, let me calm down for a second. Let me get ready to do the voiceover voice thing. And let's just talk about the psychological stuff that's going on in your brain from the moment of having the thought up until the relapse. It all starts with the trigger. People who struggle with drinking often have triggers that they associated with drinking in the past. For some people, it might be a location, such as a certain bar where they used to drink, or a group of people with whom they used to drink. Being around past triggers can make a person start thinking about drinking again. Then, the thought. The way you think about a trigger can determine whether you continue on to a relapse. For example, it is common for people to mentally justify having a drink by allowing themselves to have thoughts like, I'm around old friends, and I'll only have one drink. I can control it this time. These thoughts are red flags that can make a person more likely to relapse when they struggle with alcohol. The craving. Once you have given yourself mental permission to exit sobriety, it can be very difficult to control your drinking. You may find yourself drinking for longer than you intended or drinking more than you intended. Then the relapse. The guilt and hopelessness are common feelings after a person in recovery has had a drink. They may think they are a failure and unable to maintain sobriety. These negative thoughts reinforce the slip up. Further, they feed a sense of hopelessness that can lead to the person continuing to drink. They may possibly be convinced that they are now unable to ever stop. So what do you do if you relapse and you're on a streak? Like you've done 30 days or you're trying to do 30 days. You're 100 days in, a year in. Maybe you are years into your journey. And you have a misstep, you drink. Do you get to still continue the streak? That question is what inspired this video, because I was watching another channel in the sobriety niche, like sobriety space, because I'm trying to get a competitive advantage because I want to win this YouTube game. I'm just joking, kind of. I want to help people, but I also want to talk about things from a different perspective, my perspective. And when I heard this person tell the person that asked the question, like it was the influencer, creator, whatever. They said to the person asking the question, do I have to like restart my sobriety? Yeah, you do. And the creator told that person, you don't need to do that. You can just keep going. And I think that that's absolute bullshit. You have to hold yourself accountable. I'm a run streaker. I run for at least a mile outside every day. I've been doing it for 610 or whatever days at the point of this video. If I take a day off and then I continue running the next day, it's impressive because out of the last 600 and some days in a row, I could say I've ran every day except for one day, but I don't get to say I've been doing the days consecutively. You do this for two reasons. One, the things that are hard to do that are impressive, you don't get to just like participation trophy your way into that position. It requires work and dedication. Not everyone has to do it, and a lot of people fail doing it. So that's what makes it remarkable when you do achieve like something big, like staying sober for a year or running every day for a year or whatever it is. It doesn't mean you're less of a person. And if anything, I've been thinking about this quote a lot recently, and It allowed me, honestly, to get into the right mind space when I wrote the video about not drinking for a year. The quote is, "Where the wound is where the light enters." And the way that I interpret this quote is that your wound, your place that is, maybe for me, it's like my shame core. Once I figured that out and I started being honest about the shame that I have and the guilt that I feel, and I started talking about all the mistakes in my past, and there's a bunch. I'm going to share them with you. I'm going to share them with myself. I'm going to write about them. I have been writing about them. But sharing those things has done two things. One of those things is I'm a creator. I'm a, I guess, YouTuber. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. And I've always been in this space. And I've recently, over the last few years, wanted to really like focus in on like the self-development, personal development space. And it took me a while to get to a place where I'm like, I'm going to identify the thing that's the most painful about me, my existence, like what's the biggest problem I have, and I'm going to try to solve that because I know that will be valuable to you. And to get there, to get to that point, it took a lot of honesty and vulnerability. So I think that if you're on your sober journey, and then you're talking to other sober people, and you say, I've been sober for 3 years, but really you've relapsed or had a slip here and there or whatever over the last 3 years, and you don't share that to the person you're talking to, you're doing yourself a disservice, but you're also doing the person that's listening to you a disservice, because if you've been sober for 3 years and you're talking to someone that really wants to quit drinking, they're going to, whether you like it or not, and whether it's right or not, they're going to put you on a pedestal because you're where they want to be. And like how I feel with this YouTube channel and my writing, I know that I have an obligation to my audience to be truthful. I'm not labeling this as fiction. This is all nonfiction. So if I tell you that I'm perfect and I've never messed up and I have been sober for the last 10 years, even though I've only been trying to be sober for the last 10 years, you're going to think that there's something wrong with you because I have not made any mistakes and you're struggling. So it's absolute bullshit. If you decide to lie to yourself and tell yourself you're on this sober streak, even though you've been messing up, own it. That's really the only way to like work through your problems too. You can't hide from them. You can, but then they get worse. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is create a space where we can all get better together. You can hear me talking about the mistakes that I've made, the slip-ups that I've encountered, and how I've worked through them. And honesty, me being honest, is one of the biggest things that have been a catalyst for change. So if you go out there and you mess up, that's okay, all right? You know, maybe feel bad. Maybe be like, man, I messed up and I don't like messing up. But then like get up and dust yourself off, okay? It's okay to make mistakes, and it's really not okay, in my opinion, to lie about those mistakes if you're trying to help other people and trying to be a leader. Okay, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, soapbox, speech, whatever you want to call it. I will see you again so soon. Thank you so much for being here. Stay awesome.